He cried at dinner when he saw my savings, and now I feel guilty for being responsible. My boyfriend of 7 years started crying at a restaurant because of my savings account. Not because of something I did wrong. Not because of something hurtful I said. Because I showed him that I had been responsible with money my entire adult life. And somehow, sitting across from him watching tears roll down his face in the middle of a public dinner, I started to feel guilty. I started to feel like maybe I had done something wrong. And that right there, that feeling, is exactly what we need to talk about today. Because when you start feeling ashamed of your own financial discipline, something worth examining is happening at that table. So let me take you back to the beginning of this story and really walk you through what went down, because there is a lot more layered into this situation than just one emotional moment at a restaurant. The dinner is the flashpoint, yes, but the story underneath it has been building quietly for years, in shared grocery runs and split utility bills and patient budget conversations that never quite landed, and you need the full picture to understand why this moment hit the way it did. Our narrator, a 28-year-old woman, has been with her boyfriend since she was 21 years old. They met when she was 19. So this is not some new relationship where you are still figuring each other out. This is 7 years of shared life, shared history, of learning each other's rhythms and tolerances and breaking points, and in the last 5 of those years, a shared living situation with another couple in a house. That shared living arrangement is actually a big part of how she was able to save so much money, and she is completely transparent about that. Lower rent split more ways, a stable and predictable routine, a disciplined mindset she has carried since she was a kid, receiving birthday money and tucking it away instead of spending it immediately. Pandemic savings that other people burned through on takeout and impulse purchases she quietly set aside. Consistent habits built slowly over a lifetime of small decisions, not one dramatic financial windfall, not a lucky inheritance. Nothing flashy. Nothing secretive. Just steady, intentional saving, day after day, year after year. Her boyfriend, who is 32 years old, has ADHD. She mentions this not as an excuse for him but as important context, because she clearly loves him and has clearly tried to help him. She has offered to help him budget. She has sat down with him, probably at a kitchen table with a laptop open and a cup of coffee going cold between them, and tried to build financial habits together more than once. And every time, it does not stick. She understands why, because she has clearly taken the time to understand his condition and not just dismiss it. Task initiation is genuinely hard when your brain resists starting things that feel overwhelming. Impulse control is genuinely hard when delayed gratification feels almost physically painful. Maintaining routines is hard when every week feels like starting from scratch. She is not blaming him for struggling with any of this. She is genuinely, patiently trying to support him. That matters enormously. It tells you a lot about who she is in this relationship and how much grace she has extended over 7 years. But here is where the night goes sideways. They are at dinner, sitting across from each other at what was probably supposed to be a nice, hopeful conversation about their next chapter together. They are talking about their upcoming move into their own apartment, just the two of them, which will cost more than what they have both been paying while living with another couple. It is a completely natural, completely necessary moment to have a financial conversation. She decides to be open and honest, which is exactly what you would want from a long-term partner standing on the edge of a major life transition. She shows him her savings account. Maybe she hands him her phone across the table. Maybe she pulls up the number herself and turns the screen toward him. And he shuts down completely. The air changes. His face changes. He starts crying, right there in the restaurant, surrounded by other diners and ambient noise and the particular vulnerability of a public place where neither of you can fully fall apart. And then he starts asking her things like, "How did you save that much? And why do I have so little compared to you?" And the tone of those questions, the weight behind them, makes her feel like she has somehow done something to him by having money in her account. Let me just sit with that for a second. She split every single expense 50-50 with this man. Rent, utilities, food, all of it, down the middle, for years. She did not ask for less from him because she earned more or saved better. She did not quietly build a cushion while letting him carry more than his share. She did not hide her savings to avoid this exact reaction, which would have been understandable given what happened. She was transparent and honest in the way a real partner should be, especially one about to co-sign a lease. And his response was to cry and make her feel like she had wronged him simply by being disciplined with money he never had any claim to in the first place. That is a complicated emotional dynamic, and it deserves to be examined carefully rather than smoothed over. Now, to her enormous credit, she does not spiral into anger. She does not come to the internet to complain about what a bad partner he is or to collect validation for a decision she has already made. She comes asking how she can help him. How she can make him feel better. What she can do to ease the tension and preserve the warmth between them going into this next chapter of their lives together. That is a remarkably generous instinct, especially after being made to feel guilty for something that required no apology. And I want to honor that instinct while also being honest with her about what she is actually describing. Because when you show your partner something that reflects well on you, something that represents years of personal discipline and quiet sacrifice and choices nobody else saw you make at 22 and 24 and 26, and their response is to make you feel guilty for it, that is worth paying attention to. Not because he is a villain. He is clearly not. He is a person struggling with real challenges, and his emotions in that moment were probably genuine and not calculated to wound her. But guilt is a powerful emotion, and it has a way of quietly reshaping how you behave going forward, often in ways that do not serve you, often in ways you do not even notice until you look back and realize you have been making yourself smaller for a long time, apologizing for things that required no apology. The update she shares later actually adds a crucial piece of information that completely changes the texture of this whole story and reframes why that dinner felt the way it did. She finds out over the weekend after that dinner that her boyfriend had over $1,000 in unpaid parking tickets. More than $1,000. Sitting there unaddressed, accumulating, being ignored. And he paid them off that very Friday, quietly, urgently, just so he could get his overdue car registration sorted out before it became an even bigger problem. And that is not a small thing to absorb. That is not an ADHD blip or a minor budgeting stumble that anyone could make. That is a pattern of financial avoidance with real compounding consequences, the kind of consequences that do not stay contained to one person when two people are about to share a home and a lease and a financial life together. And she found out about it only because she was already in the middle of a vulnerable financial conversation with him, because she had chosen to be open. Imagine if she had not been. I want to be really fair here because this situation deserves fairness on all sides. I know that ADHD makes financial management genuinely, meaningfully hard in ways that people without the condition often underestimate or wave away with a simple, just set a reminder. It is not that simple. Forgotten bills that seemed manageable until suddenly they were not, sitting in a pile or an inbox, growing quietly into something much worse. Impulsive purchases that felt completely justified in the moment and then deeply, privately regrettable 2 days later when the dopamine has settled and the account balance is just sitting there. Difficulty planning for a future that feels abstract and far away when the present is already loud and exhausting and demanding all of your attention. These are real symptoms of a real neurological condition and they deserve real, sustained compassion. But knowing that something is hard does not make the consequences disappear into thin air. The parking tickets do not disappear because his brain works differently. And it does not mean the people who love someone with ADHD are required to absorb those consequences silently, indefinitely, without ever being allowed to name what they are seeing. She has been with this man for 7 years. She is now 28 years old, standing at the edge of a more expensive living situation with someone whose financial patterns she knows intimately by now. And somewhere inside that new apartment, the question of whose savings cover the emergency when the car breaks down or the medical bill arrives, whose credit carries the gap when a bill is missed or a payment is forgotten, whose financial future quietly shrinks and flattens because one person cannot build and sustain good habits over time. That question is already forming in the walls before they even sign the lease. She can feel it. That quiet, unspoken dread sitting just underneath all the love and the loyalty and the shared history and the genuine hope for what comes next is exactly why she came to Reddit. Not because she wants out. Not because she does not love him. But because she is scared of what she already knows, and she needed someone to help her figure out whether that fear is reasonable or whether she is being unfair to him. After they got home from dinner, he said he wants to start budgeting again. He said he wants to set a specific savings amount each month and actually follow through this time. He talked about looking for a new job if his raise does not come through, and about finally getting a professional certificate for career advancement that he has been putting off for a long time. Those words, spoken in the quiet of their home after a difficult public moment, probably felt tender and hopeful to her. There is something genuinely moving about watching someone choose to face the thing they have been avoiding, about watching a person decide in real time that they want to be better. And those are genuinely good signs that deserve to be acknowledged. A person who is willing to sit in the discomfort of that conversation and come out the other side with a plan, even a fragile one, is a person who has not given up on themselves. Growth conversations are meaningful, especially when someone is vulnerable enough to have them after crying at a restaurant. But she also needs to notice, clearly and without flinching, how many times this exact pattern has cycled before. She has helped him budget. He starts with real intention and genuine energy. He stops when the friction builds. Life continues without the habit ever taking root. He is now 32 years old and he just paid off more than $1,000 in parking ticket debt that he never mentioned to the person he is about to sign a lease with. The question she really needs to be sitting with is not how can I help him feel better right now. The question is what does my financial future actually look like if nothing changes this time either. Now let me be clear about exactly where I stand on this entire situation, because I think she deserves a real, direct answer and not just soft reassurance. She did nothing wrong. Not one single thing. She saved her money carefully and consistently. She split expenses fairly without asking for special treatment. She offered help she was never obligated to offer, over and over again, with real patience. And she was honest with her partner at a moment when honesty was exactly what the situation called for. The guilt she felt sitting across from him in that restaurant was not a signal that she did something wrong. It was a sign that someone she loves was hurting and she naturally, instinctively absorbed that pain as though it were her responsibility to fix. That is empathy. That is love. But empathy alone should not cost you your financial security, and love should not require you to feel ashamed of your own discipline or to shrink your accomplishments to protect someone else's comfort. The most important thing she can do right now is protect her savings. Not hide them, not lie about them, not pretend they do not exist, but be clear in her own mind and eventually in their shared understanding that her emergency fund is hers. It is her safety net. It is the thing that will save both of them if something goes wrong after they move in together, because savings protect everyone in a household, not just the person who built them. She does not owe him access to it under any circumstances. She does not owe him a portion of it to compensate for his own financial choices across the years they have been together. She owes him honesty, partnership, encouragement, and love. She has already been giving all of those things, consistently, for 7 years. If he follows through on the certificate, finds a better job, builds a budgeting habit that actually sticks this time, then this dinner will have been the turning point they both needed. That is the best possible version of this story. But if the pattern continues, if the parking tickets keep accumulating and the savings never grow and the gap between their financial realities keeps widening, she needs to have thought clearly in advance about what that means for her future. Because she has spent 7 years being responsible. She deserves a partner who rises to meet her, not one who makes her feel guilty for already being there. My parents ignored me my whole childhood and now want a relationship because my sister is gone. His parents just remembered they have a son. He is 23 years old. They placed his severely disabled sister into a nursing facility about a month ago, and suddenly, after 2 decades of being essentially invisible in his own home, his parents want a relationship with him. They are reaching out. They are trying. And he is sitting there wondering whether he owes them anything at all. This one is going to require us to really go somewhere emotionally, because there is nothing simple about this story. Let me take you all the way back to the beginning, because that is where the real damage was done. His sister, who is now 24, had a catastrophic medical episode when she was only a few weeks old. She was essentially the same age as him. They are Irish twins born less than a year apart, and this seizure event left her with severe brain damage. She lost the ability to talk, to swallow, to sit up, to do anything for herself. She became entirely dependent on medication and machinery to survive. And overnight, his parents made a decision that would define the next 2 decades of his life. They redirected everything they had, every hour, every ounce of emotional energy, every practical resource, toward his sister. You have to try to imagine what that looked like inside a home. 2 infants. One of them fragile beyond description, requiring round-the-clock monitoring, medications timed to the minute, equipment that beeped and hummed through the night. The other one healthy, quiet, asking for nothing yet, still too small to know he was already being left behind. His parents made that decision in the fog of crisis and grief and medical terror, and they made it without ever stopping to ask what it would cost their son. He was sent to live with his grandparents almost immediately. He was just weeks old himself when his parents essentially stepped back from parenting him. They let him sleep at home eventually, but that was the extent of his daily life with them. His grandparents raised him, fed him, cared for him, celebrated him, showed up for him in all the quiet, consistent ways that build a child into a person. While his parents were physically present in the same house for parts of his childhood, they were emotionally and practically absent from his life in every way that mattered. He grew up in a split world, warm and seen at his grandparents', invisible and secondary everywhere else. And here is the part that makes my chest hurt. He kept trying. He kept going back to them, because that is what children do. They do not give up on their parents easily. It goes against every instinct a child has. So he would try to talk to his mom and she would tell him his sister needed her. He would try again, maybe days later, maybe weeks later, and get the same answer, her eyes already drifting back to the monitor, her hands already moving toward the next task. He was a child who wanted his parents, and they kept redirecting him away, over and over, with the kind of quiet, consistent rejection that does not leave a bruise you can point to but carves something out of you all the same. Until one day his mother called him a selfish brat for trying to get her to attend a parent-teacher conference. A parent-teacher conference. The most basic, minimum expected act of parenting. His teacher said a parent needed to be there. His dad had already said no without hesitation. And when he went to his mom, probably with that specific mix of hope and dread that children develop after years of being turned away, she did not say I am so sorry, I cannot make it. She did not say let me see what I can do. She called him selfish for asking. That moment deserves its own pause. He never got birthday celebrations from his parents. They did not track his grades. They did not know how he was doing emotionally or personally, what he was afraid of, who his friends were, what he dreamed about. His grandparents filled every single one of those gaps with love and consistency, and then when his parents decided he was old enough to be useful, they pulled him back home to help with his sister. They actually stopped his grandparents from caring for him the way they had been. They took away the one stable parental presence he had, not to replace it with their own love, but to replace it with chores and caregiving responsibilities. Think about what that transition must have felt like. To be moved away from warmth and into service. To watch the people who actually knew you get pushed to the edges of your daily life while the people who barely acknowledged your existence handed you tasks instead of affection. At 17, nearing the end of his senior year, it finally exploded. They wanted him to stay home and help more, to give up more of the small life he had managed to build for himself, and he lost it. He cussed them out, called them names, refused to do a single thing they asked. And you know what? I understand every word of that explosion. That was not a teenager being dramatic. That was 17 years' worth of accumulated grief and rage and longing finally finding an exit. The walls of that house must have felt like they were closing in, all of it at once, every turned back, every redirected conversation, every birthday that passed without a cake, every conference they skipped, every moment he had reached for them and found nothing. He moved out on his 18th birthday with his grandparents helping him, and they essentially stopped communicating after that. He built a life in the silence they had always offered him. Now he is 23. His sister has been placed in a nursing facility for young disabled people, where she will receive the professional, round-the-clock care she needs for the rest of her life. And his parents, having finally relinquished the role that consumed them entirely, have turned around and noticed the son they left behind. They are reaching out. They are trying to be more involved. And he is ignoring them, not because he feels nothing, but because what he feels is enormous and complicated and has nowhere clean to go. He does not hate them simply. He grieves them. And grief is so much harder to navigate than anger. I want to say something about his parents before I go any further, because I think it matters. I do not believe they are evil people. I think they were two people handed an impossible situation before they had any idea how to handle it. A medically complex, completely dependent child with no warning and no preparation. The fear alone must have been staggering. Their response, while understandable at a human level, was still a catastrophic failure of parenting. They had a second child. He was real. He needed them. And they made a sustained, decades-long choice to treat him as secondary. That is not a forgivable thing just because the circumstances were hard. Hard circumstances do not erase the harm caused to the child who was left behind. What strikes me even harder is that they were offered help and they refused it. Respite care was available. Services existed that could have given them breaks and still allowed them to be present for their son. They turned all of it down. And that choice, that specific choice, is the one that removes the full weight of sympathy from them. Because the sacrifice they made was not just their own. They sacrificed him too. And he never agreed to that. He says his wish is for them to leave him alone. He wants them to understand that they are parents in name only. And he notices, correctly, that there has been no apology. There has been no admission that what they did was wrong. They have simply shown up expecting to pick up a relationship that they never actually built, as if the absence of his sister's care needs is the only thing that was keeping them apart, rather than 23 years of neglect. Let me be honest about what I think he should do, because he deserves clarity here. He does not owe his parents a relationship. He does not owe them forgiveness. He does not owe them the chance to repair what they broke just because they are now available and willing. Availability in year 23 does not erase unavailability in every year before it. The fact that they are now trying is not a debt he has to repay. It is, at best, a starting point that they do not get to demand he accept on their timeline. If he ever decides he wants to explore a relationship with them, that is his right and his choice. But it should only happen with a real, explicit acknowledgement from them of what they did. Not the vague energy of showing up and acting like things can just move forward. He needs to hear the words. He needs them to say they know they failed him. He needs them to sit in that discomfort without rushing past it toward the reconciliation they want. Until that happens, any relationship they build will be built on a foundation of things left unsaid, and he will carry the weight of that silence alone. The people who actually showed up for him are his grandparents. They are in their 70s now, and they have been his real parents in every sense that counts. If he is going to invest emotional energy into any family relationship, it belongs with them. They earned it. They showed up when no one else did. They chose him when his own parents did not. He is 23 years old and he has already survived something that would have broken a lot of people. The fact that he is asking this question at all, that he is uncertain, that he is not just slamming the door and walking away without a second thought, says something profound about his character. He has every right to slam that door. The fact that he is pausing to think it through means he is approaching this with more grace than most people would. My final word on this is simple, and I mean it completely. His parents do not get to decide when the healing starts. He does. They lost that right when they chose, repeatedly and knowingly, not to show up for him. The door is his to open or close, on his timeline, on his terms, and only after they have demonstrated the kind of sustained accountability that matches the sustained absence they put him through. Anything less is not a relationship. It is just his parents needing something from him again. Drop a comment below telling me which story hit harder. I genuinely want to know. And if you found this video, leave a like and subscribe because there is a lot more where this came from.